I mentioned it on the last episode, but the podcasting industry and by and large, creators are becoming much more abundant. There are more of us. There are more podcasters. There are more podcasts. You know, one host might have 10 shows. The industry is just becoming that, an industry. And with it, things are changing. And one of the things that I'm seeing change very, very frequently and very, very regularly and at a very quick pace is how podcasters, independent podcasters like you and I, can generate sponsorship revenue. And that is what we're going to talk about here on the Podcast Accelerator today. Can you get fixed price podcast sponsorship instead of the traditional CPM model? I'm your host, Mark Asquith. This is the Podcast Accelerator. It's brought to you by Rebel Base Media, the English podcasting company that works all over the world and that produces podcast websites, the managed WordPress platform for podcasters. It produces the Podcast Success Academy, the interaction startup productivity, and of course, Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host. Go and check it out now for all the features that you'd expect from a world-class podcast host, plus the ability to host multiple shows for one cost. Go and check out why it's making waves. And of course, as usual, this episode is brought to you by the team at AWeber. I work very close with the AWeber guys on their product roadmap, working through with some of their UX team on how to make email marketing more effective and better for podcasters, which is why they put out their automated and fully included onboarding sequence for podcasters. So when people sign up to your emailing list, AWeber will give you for free an automated onboarding service that you can use to get people engaged with your list. This is absolutely vital, and it's all done for you for free in AWeber. So go and give that a kick of the tires. Go and check AWeber out for 30 days free at markasquith.com/AWeber. I use it every day to build this show, and I know it works. So again, markasquith.com/AWeber. So let's ask, is there merit in exploring a fixed price sponsorship model for your podcast as opposed to being held at the whim of a low CPM rate that relies solely on download numbers? I believe that there is merit in doing that. So let's just kind of go through some of the terminology that I'm using there to start with. CPM is cost per mille, M-I-L-L-E, which essentially means it's derived from the kind of millennial kind of wording. So cost per 1,000, cost per 1,000. Okay, now CPM rate is the rate that you are expected to get paid from a sponsor per 1,000 downloads that you get for every episode that you launch within usually 28 days, 4 weeks of launch. So I'm not talking here that if you get 10,000 downloads a month across your show, you'll get paid 10 times the CPM rate. No. This is the CPM rate. The cost per 1,000 is the number of downloads per episode that you get within 4 weeks of that episode releasing. So if I release this episode today and within 4 weeks it gets 1,000 downloads and someone says to me, which is about an average rate, this is not me just undercutting it, the average rate around $30 CPM. If this episode got 1,000 listens, 1,000 downloads within 4 weeks of launch, and someone said, we believe the CPM rate for this show is $30, I would get paid $30 for this episode. That is it. It's crazy. It's kind of pointless. Okay? And the thing that you've got to understand with this is that this is based on old radio advertising. It's based on, even based on like online advertising. CPM is an online display rate as well. And it just doesn't work in my mind for podcasters that are using, or that have got low download numbers. So we've seen so many people now saying, I want to monetize my podcast from day one. All right, I get that. I don't know whose courses you're listening to, but please stop. Don't listen to their courses, because there is pretty much no way that you're going to be able to quit your job from day one on your podcast. Sure, you can make a bit of Patreon money. Fine, you can do that. Maybe cover your costs, but you ain't quitting your job, all right? So whoever's courses are teaching you that, please stop bloody using them, all right? Please stop listening to them, because it's wrong, okay? So, CPM rates, they're not great for independents like you and me. However, like I mentioned on the last episode, you are not just a podcaster. You are an audio influencer. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that you've got a brand. It means that you've got reach. It means that you've got things that people will do if you ask them. So you might only have 100 people listening to your show every week, and that sounds low, but believe me, it's not. If 100 people turned up every time I put a meetup on, every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 100 people turned up, I'd be over the bloody moon with that. And those 100 people are your fans. They're people that enjoy what you do and that will buy into you. They're the people that will advocate for you and that will give you money on Patreon. And that's something that you can actually tell sponsors you can work with and say, look, yeah, the numbers are low, but look, if I ask someone to message me on Twitter or send an email to me with this subject line or do something, 70% of my audience does it. So I get 100 downloads and I get 70 emails when I ask people to email me. That's a really good engagement rate. Okay, so what we can then start to say is, well, look, sure, we can't provide 100,000 downloads, but what we can provide is very high, focused, targeted niche engagement. And we believe that actually our podcast is worth more than $30 per 1,000 downloads. So what we do is we fix the price. We say this is $200 per episode or $100 or $1,000, whatever you want. But we are saying that this is our rate, our fixed price rate, okay, based on what we believe our engagement to be, because we are that audio influencer in our niche. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's a stretch, Marco. That is a stretch. Can I really do that with my audience? Well, yes, you can. All of my sponsorships for the show are fixed price. Some of the bigger entrepreneurial podcasts, so take JLD, friend of mine, and JLD and Kate, their shows, good friends, know them very, very well, used to work with them in the podcast websites business. And you know, John's show, EO Fire, it's one of the most long-running entrepreneurial shows out there. Regardless of downloads, John charges a fixed price per episode, okay? And you can do the same thing. You can charge from day one. If you get a local brand, let's say you run a Sheffield-based podcast, all right? And I'm in Sheffield right now recording this. You're in a Sheffield-based podcast, you got 100 listeners, but they're all students. And you run a sandwich shop right outside the university. Is it worth you paying £100 a week to get 100 listeners through your door that are each going to spend, what, £4 or £5? Of course it is. Of course it is, okay? So if you've got a Sheffield-based podcast and you can prove that your listeners are students and that they will take action when you ask them to, you can approach that sandwich shop and say, listen, these are my peeps. They do this thing when I ask them to do it. If I said to them, try this sandwich shop across the road, they would probably try it. Let's give them a special offer. Let's build some retention in for you. You just give me £100 per episode and we'll call that quits. But you're going to make probably an extra £1,000 a week from it. Okay? So what you've got to realize is that you do hold sway, and it's not necessarily about the numbers. As long as you can prove engagement and prove that your influence means something, yes, you can get fixed price podcast sponsorship instead of CPM rates. And the really good thing with this is that you can approach people local to you, or you can approach people who use and want your audience. So people who, you know, let's say you've got a fishing podcast and you're not hyper local, but you're generally a world fishing podcast. You know, maybe you got some listeners in Australia, Canada, UK, France, Spain, the US. You can talk to a fishing brand. Okay, you could talk to a fishing brand and say, look, I've got these listeners, 300 listeners, and they're spread all over the country, they're spread all over the world, but you operate all over the world. So why don't we talk about fixed price sponsorship? Okay, you can do that. And I believe you can do that today. It's about picking the right sponsors and knowing how to measure your engagement. All right, so think that through. Could you start to get fixed price sponsorship for your podcast right now? Let me know. Give me a shout on Twitter at Mr. Asquith. Hit me up. It's very simple. We just have a chat over there. Just hit me up if you need a hand with anything. Let me know whether you think you could get fixed price sponsorship for your show based on everything that I have just said. And as always, thank you for joining me. It's a real pleasure to be able to do this for you. It's unbelievable that I get to do this every single day as a job. I'm very, very grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you listening, to you, the constant listener. I appreciate you. If you're new to the show, welcome to the show. I know we've had a slew of new listeners recently. So if you are new, a very, very big welcome from myself and all the Rebel Base Media team. And until the next time, do check out Captivate.fm for your podcast hosting, analytics and marketing needs. And until the next episode, never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.